Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Toon review on this Monday night. I hope you've had an absolutely fantastic weekend, obviously with Newcastle winning on Friday night. For once, we had a nice weekend where we could relax and smile instead of being upset at the result. A lot went on in that game, obviously, and some decisions were a little bit bizarre, as we've seen across the football and leagues over the weekend, and we're delighted to say we've got a fantastic guest on tonight, Keith Hackett, who is, well, of course, a very, very experienced referee. I think he refereed early in the Premier League years for 1 or 2 years, but he's taken control of Germany against Italy and FA Cup final. So a vastly experienced guy to get his thoughts on with the VAR and all the decisions going here, there, and everywhere. So we'll bring him on immediately. Good evening, Keith.
Good evening. Delighted to be on your show.
Delighted to have you, Keith. Obviously, there's a lot going on, which has been many talking points. Well, not just this weekend, but for the last few weeks, obviously. And it's been a little bit confusing, but for Newcastle fans' point of view, the incident on Friday with Elliot Anderson's goal that was chalked off for offside. I think it was Dermot Gallagher on Sky this morning said that it should have been a goal. Where do you stand on it?
Oh, there's no question that this is a goal. And VAR should not have come in. I mean. What we had was certainly had the Newcastle player in an offside position when the ball is played, but then the defender plays it. So under the law of deliberate play, he's effectively played the Newcastle player onside. The offside is negated, and therefore that goal has to stand. So incorrect application of law by the match officials, VAR. Obviously, the referee automatically takes the VAR position on offsides.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit bizarre because obviously Paul Tierney went to the monitor, but we couldn't see any lines drawn or anything like that, or where the actual offside incident took place. Yeah. And what we've seen in the past, certainly during the season, is that the lines are drawn, and whether we agree with them or not, that's the decision. But there was nothing, which is very, very confusing.
Well, I think at the time when we're looking, I mean, even I was confused because my first view is, having seen the play, and television covered it very accurately, you could see that defender has made a deliberate play. And, because of the incident involving Manchester United player that we had with an offside call or non-offside, all those situations, you then say, look, they appear to be confused, the match officials, so I'm going to reread the law. I did that a few weeks ago and satisfied myself that I understand it. So here is a defender who has kicked the ball onto the Newcastle player. What he's doing is he's clearing the ball. He's late to it in terms of the attacker's got the benefit in that sense, but he's come in and he's kicked the ball and it's hit the Newcastle player. And play continues, the ball goes across, and a legitimate goal has been scored. And I've been saying it for the last few seasons. When we actually look at VAR, and I just want to perhaps digress a little. I'm the guy, when I was boss of the PGMOL, and when I retired from refereeing, moved to have professional referees. And that was all aimed at giving them time, greater amount of time than I had. I would sometimes referee at Newcastle, drive home, and then have to be in London for 9 o'clock the next morning. So the pressures of an amateur referee in the professional game were increasing. And my bosses were saying, enough's enough. You've got to make a decision. So ultimately, that is why I promoted the idea in the first place for professional referees. Get them fitter, sports science, do with the nutritionist and all that goes with it. I also introduced communication kits and goal line technology. And I just want to reflect a bit, because on goal line technology, I said I didn't want the referee involved, other than it's a goal. I don't want him no goals. I don't want any confusion. Don't want him going to a screen. I just want the technology to say goal, no goal. It's failed 3 times in thousands of games, and that is down to technical itch, people not switching it on. So now we go to VAR, and the confusion that if we see the introduction of VAR and we look at the history, and forgive me a little bit.
Okay.
In year one, when FIFA said we're going to have VAR, the Premier League decided we're not having it. The MLS, and Webb was in charge, took it on board. Webb did the rounds with clubs, he did the round with managers, he had open discussion, debate, and he introduced a guy called Greg Barkey, who runs VAR in America. And each week you can go on, they do a show of VAR events. They're open in terms of transparency. Over here, the second year, we introduce it. And we're waiting for somebody to go to the monitor. They're there at the side of the pitch. Nobody's using them. And in year 3, we get Mike Riley coming out saying, we're going to use them sparingly, the monitor. And it's used 3 times in 380 games. In the meantime, what we've got is we've got referees becoming lazy and over-relying on VAR. They're actually saying, and you can see it, and probably I can see it better than you. I'm not being disrespectful.
No.
As a referee, I'm thinking, why aren't you giving that penalty kick? VAR is going to come in and tell you it's a penalty kick. Because you don't want to make an error, but he's suddenly thinking, blame it on the VAR. Then what we've got is further confusion in terms of what we see in relation to what is clear and obvious errors. Because I'm saying it's clear and obvious, and on other occasions I'm saying it's not.
Yeah.
So there's an inconsistency against what's clear and obvious. In terms of offside decisions, if you look at the way I got to the goal line technology is, and I work very closely with Hawkeye, we use cameras that run at 500 frames per second. And to get the accuracy, we use 7 cameras. So if we look at what we use in the Premier League and in other parts of Europe, we use broadcast camera speeds, which are less than 100 frames per second in some cases. So as a consequence, the dilemma is, unlike goal line technology, ball crossing the line, I've now got to understand when the ball is being kicked, at the point, the exact slice of the cake, when is it kicked, and recognizing that the law says a player can be in an offside position, but he's not convicted, not actually committed an offence.
Yeah.
So now we've got this grey area of is active or is non-active. And then they bring in this deliberate play. A player, because what they're saying is you can't use the psychology of a player being on your left-hand shoulder as a defender. I can't say that he's applying pressure to me because he is. Yeah. I'm going to react. But if you go for that ball, then that player's not going to be offside. So the inconsistency that is running through the use of VAR, and look, I lived in Newcastle area for a couple of years, so I know the passion of Newcastle fans. You know, I've had to segregate on a Monday morning workforce, arguing with those people down the road that wear a different coloured shirt, arguing about who's the best centre forward. So I've put up with all that. So I know the passion in your area.
Well, if the thing that was that probably upset a lot of Newcastle fans was it was Elliot Anderson who scored, who of course has come through the ranks. He's a Newcastle fan. It was a big moment for him, and you saw the sheer passion and joy on his face. You know, the fans joining in with the celebrations, and then you know it gets taken away. And I don't know whether there's just too many different. I don't know what you think, but is there too many different interpretations of offside at the minute?
I think that the offside law is an ass. Just like the handball law is an ass.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, you know, I've got a law book in the drawer here, 1938, and that's the law on handball that should apply. It's so simple. It says deliberate. It doesn't talk about body shape bigger and all, because what you've got is you've got administrators sitting around a table. Now, I was an active referee for about 40 years. And in that time, I gained a great deal of understanding about the game. I was a player at grassroots level, not anywhere near semi-pro. But the reality is you gain experience over the years. What we have at the moment is, in certain circumstances, we've got administrators sat around a table, almost like playing with Subbuteo or whatever you want, Monopoly, writing up the laws. And what they're doing is they're moving the game away from the fans. They're moving the game away from refereeing because they're bringing slide rules into it. And when we look at it, you know, when I put forward professional refereeing, and I worked for a couple of years before I took over under Philip Don, because I wouldn't move to London, frankly. So I became the development manager.
Yep.
And what we said to cut all the confusion, we said what we're going to do is we don't want the offside law to cut out goals. What we want is the real obvious ones. So Philip came up with the idea, and I agree with him 100%. We'd save this space between the attacker and the defender. That would be sufficient, and that's when we would flag. But if they were level or anywhere else, we'd allow the play to continue if they were level. If the major part of the body was still in line with the rearmost defender, we'd do the same. What we've got is we've got slide rule scenarios. Trying to put science into one, in effect, is an art form. And I can sit here and say, I'm not confused. I am not confused about these laws. What I can say is this: they're laws that are written that are aimed to confuse everybody in the game, other than referees. Yeah. But you've got referees who can't be consistent. You know, I can put referees in a room, show them slides, and get different answers.
I mean, was it sort of... The reason I'm asking you about offside, Keith, is because I remember when I first started going to watch football, an offside was a simple decision. It was you're off or you're on, and then it always tried to go in favour of the forward. But now I think that the way they look at it now is they're looking at every way to rule the goal out and every possible angle to rule the goal out, which, as you say, it just spoils it for the fans. Yeah,
I mean, you know what you say? Well, okay, you finished up winning on Saturday, or Friday night. You won the game. For me, this is about every decision being perfect. That's the world I live in. I want every decision to be 100%. I know in reality that is rarely achieved, but I do know that's what you have to aim for. You have to aim for perfection. And then you have to look at the individuals, and you look at the system of, look, apart from one or two, I think we've got the worst crop of referees currently. I think we're in a lull rather than in the highs. Yeah, you know, and apart from Michael Oliver and probably Anthony Taylor at times, because of their positions. I mean, in the case of Michael Oliver, he's pretty consistent. He's a good referee. He rarely makes mistakes.
Well, we never get him because he's a Newcastle fan.
Well, of course
we never see that, you know.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I don't understand that, because I look at it. Well, he'd probably come on wearing a black and white shirt because I know he's a Newcastle fan. But in reality, you know, when we look, we have to get the very best performance out of the referees, and what we have to do, and why we went professional, was to make them fitter. Oliver can get from penalty area to penalty area in 11 seconds. I know that because I've watched and measured that. There are some who cannot. And therefore, what you want is the very best officials officiating. The Northeast, by the way, has always produced top-class referees. You don't get them. Kevin Howley, Peter Willis, George Courtney, Pat Partridge.
Yeah.
You know, these.
We get the ones from the Northwest instead.
These are not. These were outstanding referees. You know. So as a consequence, what you've got at the moment is you've got referees who are not the very best. They should be. Howard Webb's been brought in under the rule of Mike Riley. I'll be blunt. I think he was a disaster when they appointed him on day one. I said it to the people who appointed him, and he was going to take my place. He is what he is, and he's delivered what he is. He wants robots. The game isn't about robots. It's about personality. It's about actually saying, how do you deal with a Mitrovic? How get out of his space? You know, how do you deal with the Shearers, the Malcolm McDonalds of this life that I put up with? You work with them. You know, you run alongside them when they're getting a bit itchy. And if they say you're crap, ref, you don't go and run alongside and say, hey, Alan, you just missed one, mate. I thought that was a 100%er, and you've missed it, and you're telling me how to referee. That human element in communication is important. Over the season, I've watched lots of decisions. In my era of being in office, we probably had one major error every weekend. That I used to have to go and see the manager, talk them through it, and all that went with it. Yeah, I've seen 2 or 3 in one game. I'm actually saying, and you know, as fans, I don't have to tell you. You can reel off the ones where how many times can you apologise? How many times can Howard Webb in his new role apologise to the manager?
Keith, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
At the beginning of each season, the FA Premier League or whatever seem to have directives about certain offences that kind of fade out the wind after about 3 or 4 weeks. Scissor tackling was one about 2 seasons ago. We saw players sent off for it 4 or 5 times for Newcastle. And on Friday night, I saw at least 6 of those tackles take place, and not even a yellow card was shown. Do they just get forgotten about these offences, and something else takes over as flavour of the month, or as it worries me, really. It does, because it's not refereeing the game to the laws of the game, as far as I can see it.
Yeah, I think that it's a really good point, because I think if we centre on challenges for the ball, and I'm not going to educate your listeners because I think they generally understand. You have a careless challenge, which has no threat or animosity. It's just the guy's made a genuine attempt for the ball, but he's caught the player. That's a free kick and nothing else. You've got the one that's reckless, and you know, when you're educating referees, you say, look, think about driving a car. You know, you've actually gone at 32 miles an hour. That's a bit careless in a 30 mile an hour limit. You get away with it. If you go 35, 37, you're reckless, and if the copper catches you, you're done. If you crash the car, you're done. Now, and so the one area that I think you're right to talk about, and we do have the pre-season meetings with referees, and what happens is we also have the meetings with the managers. And when I say we, that's how I used to operate. And the areas of concern, if we were seeing an increasing number of players being injured and on the bench, that would come into the thought process. That's what the laws have always done: protect the players from themselves. And so the law on endangering the safety of an opponent is an easy law. If a player launches himself with 1 or 2 feet, his whole body off the ground, and he's moving, he doesn't have to be parallel with the ground, but he's sort of going backwards in that sense. His back's off the ground, his backside's off the ground. He's out of control, and therefore he can't stop himself. And at the end of the day, he's now endangered the safety of the opponent that he's going for. Now, you can't have, you know, there was one recently with Casemiro in the last couple of weeks where he's dived in, he's hit the ball, he's gone over the ball, rolled it, into the shin of his opponent. And there are some pundits who were saying, well, he's played the ball first. Ex-players saying he's played the ball. Doesn't matter if he's played the ball. He's endangered the safety of an opponent. So the answer is, we do have those pre-season meetings. We do say this is what we're going to do. And then, in the position as I was as the boss, we would review every 6 to 8 weeks. We would be reviewing performances week in, week out. But if we saw some degree of slippage, we'd then come in. And you have to understand that sometimes managers will stimulate that thought process. They will say, look, we're unhappy with diving and cheating, simulation. And, and we want you to toughen up on it. And so it is working with people in the team, and you're developing everybody's awareness. I can remember, I'll give you an example. Fellaini was purchased by Everton, and in 10 weeks he got 10 yellow cards every week. And they were the most stupidest yellow cards you could ever witness. They were for holding, they were for just grabbing. And I went across and saw David Moyes at Farmfield. They'd just taken it on their academy. And I had Fellaini in, I had an interpreter. We ran through every clip, and I explained to David Moyes why a yellow card was mandatory in that situation. As a result, the behavior of the player, and for me, what was important, the reduction of yellow cards, was the outcome. And that's why you have to work and discuss. Now, I think Howard Webb will do that. But Riley's still in the chair. And I don't think he's got the freedom to do it. And, as managers say, it's no good coming to me, telling me and apologising. It's no good the referee on Friday night apologising. He's made an error that he should not make. These are the laws of the game.
I think the problem is, Keith, is what you mentioned a minute ago, is you saw maybe a mistake per weekend. And now we're getting multiple mistakes in the same game. So Paul Tierney, for example, I mean, Billy's just described, for example, John Joe Shelvey going in with a few scissor tackles and getting nothing for it. And then Dan Burn getting a quick, swift booking for saying, oh, it wasn't a corner, it was a goal kick. Straight away, no hesitation. So, it's the inconsistencies like that. And then seeing a referee review an offside decision, which I can't say I've ever seen a referee view the screen for an offside. Typically, I don't think I've ever seen it.
Well, I don't think we have seen it. I think that the thing is, the reason he's been asked to review it is he's got to determine if there's been a deliberate play. That's what he's been asked. But if that VAR...
Subjectivity again, isn't it?
Well, look, we can all hide behind subjectivity. And what we have to do is get uniformity of that type of decision so that it's automatic. So you don't have to bring the referee across. If you're making the offside decision and you're a good enough referee, stand by the decision and say that's offside or it's not offside. Don't. It's a little bit like a red hot potato. Let me tell you how Nigel Owens explained to me. He's a famous retired now rugby union referee.
Rugby, yep.
And I had a conversation with him a couple of years ago, and I said, look, they're struggling with VAR in England. You as a rugby union referee seem to use TMO extremely well. Of course, they communicate it. So if I'm inside the stadium, I can buy a piece of ref link or something, and I can listen in, as I did at Twickenham a couple of weeks ago. Now, what we've got transparency, and we can listen in as fans. When we go to a football match, we stand there like lemons because we're all thinking, what's happening here? And when we as fans don't understand what's happening, we don't then believe the outcome because we think it's a fix. We don't really, there's no question of dishonesty here in the game of refereeing in this country. There's incompetence. And therefore, what you try to do is you try to say, look, Why has he gone across? If I was Howard Webb today, I would be wanting to know why that goal was ruled out. And by the way, I would be saying to both of them, you're not refereeing next weekend. Because I said I had a couple of referees. I mentioned one today. I mentioned Andy D'Urso. Andy D'Urso never recovered from Roy Keane barking in his face. He lost the confidence, and he wasn't in a crisis. He'd go out and he'd make an error in every match he refereed. I dropped him. Mm-hmm. There was a kid called Matt Messias Barnsley. He was an international referee. I fired him. So there's got to be also a level of accountability, because if you're in a shop floor and you're making doors for a kitchen and you make them the wrong way around, or you drill them incorrectly, right? You only do that once, you get a written warning, and if you do it again, you're out of a job.
But the issue is, Keith, is what they're doing is when they're giving these referees a week off, they'll go put them in the VAR box.
Well,
which is madness.
Well, look, what I think is madness is this: that you can have a referee officiating on a Friday night, getting out of a ground at 11 o'clock in the evening, and then it can be VAR on the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. Ridiculous. Yeah. Plus the fact that you can have a young referee like Salisbury this weekend. He's refereeing a match. He's got an experienced VAR, right? The VAR goes in and says, there's been a shirt pull. Have a look at it and disallow the goal. This is Wolves, I think. And he goes across. And and whilst I don't disagree, I disagree with his outcome, because it's a clear shirt pull. The goal should be ruled out. What's he do? He says, it's a goal. I'm gobsmacked.
Oh, was this the Adama Traore shirt?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Crazy.
And you say, yeah.
There's a couple of I've got a couple of questions from the viewers as well, Keith.
Go on.
One from the Clone Lad. He says, "Can you ask Keith why only English referees referee in the Premier League? Why do the Premier League not pick the best referees from around the world?" So I'm just saying, what he's basically saying there, is it possible that could be looked at in the future to bring? Because what we're finding is obviously there's some European referees who are absolutely fabulous, and we've seen in the World Cup and Euro Championships that there's some that aren't.
Kiwi ref, haven't we? We've got one from New Zealand.
I think we've got
Australia.
Australia, would you not be sort of pro that, Keith? A bit more from overseas coming in?
Well, there was a period of time early in my role as boss of the PGMOL where I wanted to bring in Pierluigi Collina.
Yeah.
And then you saw the politics involved. It's Italy saying, well, we don't want him to go. I argued that, just a minute, it's a flight in, no different to somebody from London flying up to Newcastle and refereeing a football match. Then it was the argument as to, well, which game is he going to referee? Is it our game or someone else? So you got all the politics involved. Generally, the UEFA will accept an exchange program of one or two referees, and so I wouldn't be against it. I suggested this about 3 or 4 years ago because we were, in terms of performance, we were carrying too many referees. Look, we're carrying a few now, but they've changed from old guys that they've pensioned off to new guys who are building their experience. And what you need to do is cover that shortfall. You want to bring the new guys in slowly and carefully, selecting who they're going to referee.
Yeah,
which are the games that are easier on paper for them to referee. So I'm not against it, but it's a whole process. If we take that Australian who I had across many years ago, and we introduced him to English refereeing and all that went with it, and he became Australia's number one. We've got Chris Beath now. He's the Australian number one. He went to the World Cup. And you've got Matthew Conger in New Zealand. These are guys who I brought across. We coached. we encouraged them, and then they went back to the countries and did really well. They have to go through a process. At the moment, we've got Willie Madden. Willie Madden is a former Scottish FIFA referee. He's come to work in England. His business has taken him to England, and he's refereeing in League Two as he's getting his foundation before he's even considered for the Championship, where there's SG2 referees, they're professional, and the Premier League. So there's a reluctance because they think it'll impair the promotion. But I'll tell you, in business, when I was a director of a company, a boss once said to me, if you want this business to be successful, you surround yourself with successful people. And so therefore, that is why I wanted to bring in Kalina, the best referee at that time. And I therefore used Kalina as the benchmark to measure all our referees. You know, and if you look at in my era, you know, Webb, okay, you had Webb, you had Clattenburg, you had Elsie, you had a mix, because I didn't want them to be clones. You had Jeff Winter, you know, they all had their individual style and the way they went about it. They were all excellent communicators. I'll
tell you something about those, though, Keith. I'll tell you something about them. We used to rant and rave about them, but by God, I'd have them back in a jiffy now.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean,
I hated them at the time, but now I'd love them back.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, I mean, look, I've lost a lot of friends in refereeing because I've been honest. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you strive for perfection. And when you see referees who are not working hard, putting in the physical effort, coasting, hesitating in their decision making, not managing players effectively, you know, I mean, look, you and I see them, and they go through the first half, no yellow cards. And you're standing there, as I am, and thinking, "Phew, he should have had one." That, you know, he's pulled the attacker back. He's prevented a possible goal scoring opportunity. All that goes with it, nothing happens. And then in the second half, they've had a cup of tea or whatever they've had. They come out, and all of a sudden, you go, "Ding, ding, ding, ding!" You've got yellow cards all over the place, and that's not the way to manage a game of football. You know, and I was brought up that red cards were a failure, yellow cards you wanted to use sparingly.
Yeah. I think that there's one incident, obviously, over the weekend that involved one of our former players as well, which I think has it's gained a lot of traction since it happened. Obviously, Mitrovic with the referee, and you know, like I say, I heard you on TalkSport this morning discussing with Laura Woods about, you know, the 10-match ban, and you were very pro that because an example has to be set. A lot of the viewers are also asking around the similar sort of thing. I know Bruno Fernandes was mentioned for the incident with the linesman, but also the behaviour of some of the managers, Keith, on the touchline screaming at the fourth officials. We saw nasty incidents when Newcastle played at Liverpool, with Jurgen Klopp on the sideline, absolutely berating the fourth official to the point where the two benches got involved and it became a little bit ugly. We've seen it with Arteta a couple of times as well. So it's not just the players, is it? It's managers as well.
No. You know, we're in a situation where have we got weak referees? Or are we not applying the law as they're supposed to apply? And I think that what we've tried to do in getting the balance, it's a pendulum that swings, and it's swung with a weakness in referees dealing with it. And the outcome is you then finish up with an out of control situation, not supported by the FA. You know, I can remember Arsene Wenger kicking a bottle, and he got a ban. You know, and that's the response, and there's a weakening of that particular argument. So let's just look at that weekend situation with Manchester United and Fulham. I mean, Fulham were coasting.
Yeah, they were.
You know, everybody would see that. I mean, I was almost ready to switch the game off and look at something else. And then you had Willian moving at pace. He's gone slightly out of position. His sticks are handed slightly out from the body. He's handled the ball. The referee's not seen it. VAR's come in, and I've gone. He's handled the ball. He's prevented he's denied an obvious goal. That's a red card offence. There's no double jeopardy in that situation. So you've now got the walk to the monitor. I'd like to see monitors put in another place. I don't know where, but I'd like it not near the technical area. You're just going into the furnace. So he's on his way. He's confronted by the manager. Now, the media immediately said, "Well, he's got into this review area, and that's why he's got the red card." The laws of the game are that if a player or any coaching staff go into what is the review area, it's marked on the floor. That's a yellow card offence. It's not red. So Silver, the manager, has said something more violent, if you like, in terms of the word. Yeah. So he's got a red card, and you know that Willian's going to get a red card, and Willian knows he's going to get a red card.
Yeah.
And so then you've got Mitrovic, and Mitrovic has lost it completely. His manager's reaction may have fed him a little bit. And, sometimes as a referee, if you actually face it up, it encourages a greater level of dissent. So what the referee's trying to do is keep it low key, and he's walking away. And then when Mitrovic puts his hand on the referee, and then puts his face almost nose up, he's going to go, and he went. And the argument, and I've had to answer it today on many occasions, and that is, at the same time, a few weeks ago at Old Trafford, a couple of weeks ago with Fernandes on the assistant referee, I was very clear. I wrote in the papers that they should be red carded. They should have been red carded. That the FA will act. It didn't act, and therefore they let the game down. What we've got to understand is there is a duty of care that players have and referees have to grassroots football. I'm okay in the Premier League. If I came to St James's Park, I've got police and security around everywhere. So I'm not in any danger of being attacked by a fan. They're gonna, I'm secure when I leave the ground. In the local parks for the grassroots referee, he's on his own, and you've now got every player thinking they can actually pull the referee a little bit more violently and say, "Are you listening to me?" So that is why I think, one, the match officials, let me tell you, on the Fernandes situation, even though it's a touch, it's not got any force in it, they should have been banned. And the FA, in not banning Fernandes, has let the game down. Those match officials, not taking the course of action they should have taken, have let the game down. So they would serve, in my eyes, a 1-week suspension. I would say to them, "I'm ringing you up. You're not got a game next week." Why? Because you've not carried out the laws of the game accurately. So it's those scenarios. So we wait and see. We wait and see if he does get a 10-match ban.
Interesting. Billy, any questions?
Yeah, I can't remember Keith as a. I'm going to make myself look senior here, but I can remember Keith as a referee when I was, which I am, of course. I remember Keith was winning the line when I and many other Newcastle fans cheered their only ever Sunderland goal at the 79 Cup final. And of course, the 81 Cup final, of course, was famous for an own goal and a goal at both ends, and then the Ricky Veer goal. What was your favourite game to referee, Keith, of all your career? Was it the 81 Cup final replay? Fantastic game of football.
Yeah, I did enjoy refereeing that. I've got many sort of views. I'll tell you a story of Newcastle. I worked at Jarrow for a company. I was a consultant in a kitchen company, and I was appointed to referee at Newcastle v Sunderland on what was an atrocious Sunday morning. And I got to the ground. I walked across it, and if I told you that water at Gallagher End was over my shoe. I turned round and I thought, I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I've got the drive back to Sheffield. I'm not going to stay over. The game's off. I got into my dressing room, and then I just went for a walk to reflect. And there was a guy sat on the seat. He was soaked. This old guy. He was probably in the 80s, and he was soaked. I took him to my dressing room. I got him dried out. Newcastle were absolutely tremendous. They got him a shirt, a tracksuit, and this guy. And I took him out into the middle, although it was so wet. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, the game's not going ahead. And he started crying out in the middle because he'd realised the dream of standing on the centre of the pitch. Anyhow, the point I'm getting to is this. There's a knock on my dressing room door. The assistant chief constable comes in and he goes, Mr. Hackett, I understand you're calling the game off. I go, that's right. He said, well, you're not. We're playing it. I go, you're kidding. We're playing it. I said, have you seen the state of it? He said, I've spoke to the Football League. I've told them about the security matters. I've got 54,000 fans all over the city. Are you telling me that if we call this match off, that we're going to have a quiet Sunday? Absolutely not. You'll play. As I'm setting off down the tunnel, down the steps, Kevin Keegan was the manager, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, are you for real? I goes, what do you mean? He said, it's a duck pond out there. I said, hey, I'm telling you, I agree. Got out to the middle, tossed up. I said to the captain, Newcastle, I'm trying to remember who it was. I said, listen, when you take the kick off, don't kick it until the left-hand side of Gallagate because it's flooded. And sure enough, there was this big kick and the ball lands. There's a big splash and I could see half the ball. And we played that game. It should never have been played. And I came off and the groundsman, I won't tell you what he said. It's the worst industrial language I've ever heard, with a few Fs and everything else that went with it. And I just said, look, I'm really sorry. We've ruined the pitch. And we had ruined the pitch. But those are the things that you remember more than the big games. You know, the cup finals and all that are great. They go down. I can look at a medal with a degree of pride. It's the games where you've been put into difficult situations, you get out of them, you know.
What was that? I know you refereed. Was it West Germany, Italy in the Euros?
Oh yeah,
that must have been some game to referee.
We you know, you're there and you're on an absolute second by second time frame. Mm-hmm. But what happened? There were two things that happened before that particular game. The first one was, as we came up the tunnel into the pitch at Dusseldorf, there was a Lurpak sign, butter sign, and I said that can't be there. You can't have players striding over the Lurpak sign. So now we've got this massive argument about a sign. And the fact that somebody's paid $1 million to have the sign there. Yeah. And let me tell you, they were really unhappy when I said it can't be there. So you're challenged even before kickoff. Then about half an hour before kickoff, this guy comes in and these two guys carrying what looked like AK-47s, and they were pretty highly dressed, and a guy in a suit and all that. And he goes, Mr. Hackett, match referee, we have a problem. We don't want you to panic, but you're going to meet the Chancellor Cole before kickoff, the introduction. Unfortunately, we've received a very serious death threat, and therefore we're going to put extra security. So if you see people coming down ropes off the edge of the stadium, don't worry.
Jesus.
It's all part of, and
right,
you see people standing on the roof. And he said, "Look, it'll be a quicker ceremony than expected. But what we'll do is this: if we will try to encourage the actual people who've made the security threat at a point that they're going to try and kill off the Chancellor, it will be at the point when he's shaking hands with you. And I thought that was a bit of a joke until afterwards I confirmed that was the threat.
Dear God.
But we refereed the match. I can tell you, I had to separate. Neil Midgley was my linesman. He was a FIFA referee at the time when we used to take referees as linesmen into Europe. Mm. There was a challenge in the first half that I hadn't seen. It was so late. He failed to get the bus. And I came in, and the argument was, firstly, was the fact that the other linesman should have flagged, and he didn't. And so there was an argument between the two linesmen about a particular challenge. My problem was that I'd had to inform both managers before kickoff and the goalkeepers about the 4-step rule then, because it wasn't applied only in this game in the championships. The law had just been changed. So at half time, I called both managers into the dressing room along with both goalkeepers again to remind them that on a couple of occasions they'd gone to 5 and that 4 was the max. And then in the second half, Zenga took 6 and I blew up and Germany scored the equalising goal. And everybody was unhappy until the manager of Italy informed the media that Mr. Hackett, the referee, had spoken to him before the game and spoken to the goalkeeper at half time. And therefore the goalkeeper was at fault for taking the steps, not the referee calling the free kick. Jeez. So those are the sort of things that happen off the game.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's also a fun side. Just one quickie.
Yeah.
I told one where I went to Bury and I arrived early. I hadn't got a car. I went by train to Bury. That's difficult. There's about 5 train trips in it. And I'm at the ground. I've arrived about 10:30. Groundsman, look, everything's okay. And then about 12 o'clock, there's a knock on the dressing room door, and I'm having a bit of a sleep, really, waiting for the kickoff. And he comes in with a red hot pie. And he says, "I've got this pie for you." And it was steaming. And I go, "Oh, what? I've got this pie. You'll really enjoy it. Pies from Bury are brilliant."
I've heard,
And I go, "Sorry, mate, I can't eat a pie before the game. I've got to run around." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll leave it you, Keith. I'll leave it you." And I go, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's one less that they can throw at you."
Oh, my God.
So those are the sort of things you can do.
Dear me. Peter Joy, thank you for your 9.99 super chat. He's got a question saying, do you think the slow-mos and camera angles make the referees' jobs much harder? Don't think the ref was given a good angle for the Traore foul, and slow-mos always make things look so much worse.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Absolutely. I always say that you should finish looking at the screen with a normal speed event so that you've got firmly fixed in your own mind what has taken place. Yeah. Look, the reason I support VAR, although it's not operating successfully at the moment, is that we've got a minimum 22 cameras at a Premier League game. Mm-hmm. In addition to the 7 that surrounds each goal for goal line technology. And therefore, an angle that's afforded to the fan at home is not afforded to the referee. That's the role of VAR. That's the camera angle that he's got to look at. But at the same time, I just want referees, if they think that they've made the right decision and they go to look at the screen and believe it's the right decision, say to the VAR, "You can have one. I'm staying with what I've got." Now, this kid did this on Saturday, but got it wrong because the Traore did hold the player. So, hey, we've got a lot of work to do in football to get VAR operating correctly. I think one thing that they've got to do is to bring in the semi-automated system sooner rather than later. And that is, they don't use broadcast cameras. They use artificial intelligence. And perhaps with a degree of consistency on offsides, we'll get an acceptance of an improvement in that decision-making process.
Keith, I want to get your views on this. We had a question from Ian. It's about Mark Halsey and those claims that he was told to lie to benefit the bigger teams against the smaller teams.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And I mean, look, a lot of football fans around the Premier League think that there is a bit of bias towards the Man United's, Man City's, Liverpool's of this world.
Yeah.
So where do you stand on that, especially what Mark Halsey had to say?
Well, let me tell you here and now that what Halsey had to say was complete false news. I sound like President Trump. Mark did, in fact, consult with lawyers on that particular comment. It has his photograph on it, and it has a statement below it. It's fake, and he lives with it, and occasionally he has to deal with it. It's never been the case. Look, the integrity of referees, and I can say this, you'll get levels of incompetence, but you'll not get any degree of integrity questions involving referees. There are systems in place, some I'm not going to even discuss, that actually are checks and balances on referees. I put some of those in place. I'll give you a few. Mobile phones, they're provided to the referee by the PGMOL. Why? Because that allows me, if I wanted to, interrogate every phone call that they make.
Yeah.
I can interrogate their bank account, their bank business, believe it or not. Then you have companies like Bet365 who look at everything by the second. If you place a bet on a Saturday, they've got a photograph of you, and they know the amount that you've placed.
Yeah.
So I put in a criteria that says very clearly referees are not allowed to gamble on football worldwide. And therefore, that's another area where if they ever did, they'd be fired. So there's systems in place, even to the supply of the internet system that is provided by the PGMOL. Their laptops are provided by the PGMOL. They're just, if you like, checks and balances. When you interrogate, and you can interrogate every decision. Look, there are millions of pounds bet on the first ball out of play in football. Spread betting is a dangerous area. And as a business, first of all, the betting companies, all of them, want to ensure that the game has high levels of integrity to protect their own interests, not just the people who are betting, their own interests. Yeah. So, look, it's not integrity, it's competence, it's experience. It is sometimes, a lot of the errors that I sort of used to look at very carefully is, one, the referee hasn't got the viewing position, and in some instances lazy. The process of a referee is to see, recognize, think, and act. And invariably errors are made because they didn't see. And part of that not seeing is because they've been lazy. They've not applied that dynamic sprint that gets them into a good viewing position. That's why VAR is so important, and why they've got to get it right. Because if the referee hasn't got that picture of an incident, then he can review it. Now, when it comes to slow-mo, I think that when we look at handling offences in particular, you sometimes need to understand where the arm started and where it finished. And in some instances, because of the nonsense of the law that says the arm up to the underside level of the underside of the armpit, whoever thought of that? And they didn't say shirt sleeves because, they'd have 3/4 shirt sleeves, wouldn't they, clubs? I mean, they always take advantage of the law. But it's that level of clarity. Ultimately, at the end of the day, with the use of VAR, you want the right decision. So your frustrations are my frustrations when you get a goal ruled out by a youngster who's developed his career with a club, puts it in the back of the net, everybody shares his glory, and some referee gets it wrong.
Yeah, Alex, you got a couple of questions there.
Yeah, it's an observation I've made this season, back end of last season as well, and I've mentioned it to a few of the guys that I keep noticing that referees seem to be nowhere near important decisions at the right time. They seem to be, and it's not something I ever used to notice. And I've always watched football in a very analytical way, like note taken and everything. And it's only in the last sort of 12 to 18 months that I've noticed referees being considerably further away from important decisions. I mean, you've just said dynamic sprint to get into a good viewing position. That's what I seem to be missing in the last 12 to 18 months. It seems to have dropped off significantly. What do you think is the reason for that? Do you think that we've got a huge, like, an aging profile of referees currently, or they're not at the requisite standard fitness wise? Like, how do we fix that?
I think it's a great observation. You're spot on. First of all, I worried about the squeezing of play between the assistant referee on the right-hand side and themselves. So what you were getting was a drift of referees towards the right-hand corner of the penalty area as you're looking towards the goal in midfield. You're actually moving and squeezing away, and then the ball to the outside wide left catches them out. So there's no question that, one, there are a number of referees who have difficulty with the aging profile. And, the sports science is a VO2 max, and VO2 max is the measurement of blood and oxygen around the body. And as you age, VO2 max achievements get more difficult to acquire. Referees do a fitness test, an annual fitness test, FIFA fitness test that proves that they're fit for purpose. But then what happens is you've got referees who are fit for the test, not fit to referee.
Is there no like regular testing then? Do they just have to do the one?
Well, I don't know if Mike Riley's continued that. I suspect not. Let me tell you, referees used to get surprises when they come to the meetings at Staverton or Warwick University, because I'd be saying, today, mate,
bleep test.
we're doing the bleep test. and therefore everybody would look and go, oh, bloody hell. Some would say, well, I've had something to eat. And they go, well, that's your problem, mate. You're still doing the VO2 max. You're still doing the bleep test.
I've just got a question about handball as well.
But let me just, your observation is one that I agree with. And I think this is why I make reference to lazy refereeing.
Well, it's as somebody, we're not professional journalists, we're not professional referees, we've not played at a high enough level. So again, this is just fan speculation. It's good to have our views sort of. I mean,
what I used to do is my model was Howard Webb, because he was a fit cookie, or Alsey. I knew that they used to do about 12K per game. And I knew technically and scientifically that they used to do 1,000 meters at 7 meters per second. That's a Thierry Henry run. And I then brought in a sprint coach because we were slow off the mark, to improve off the mark. So if you measured today's referees and just think now, and you watch Mark Clattenburg and you watch Mark Alsey or Webb, and then you measure current styles referees, you know that at times Oliver does it, but then in certain games that aren't high profile, he goes lazy. He doesn't put in the physical effort that you would expect from him. You got Anthony Taylor sometimes buzzes around and then gets decisions wrong. And you suddenly say, why is he doing that? And because you want them to be sprinters, but you want them to be referees, fit for purpose.
I suppose it's harder now that in the modern game, you've got more of the player pool are fitter than ever. You've got centre-backs who are profiling like the wingers of 20 years ago, and everybody's a lot fitter and faster, which...
Yeah, and of course, the game doesn't break down as much. What you've got is you've got central midfielders and defenders being able to kick a ball 50 yards with a degree of accuracy, not kicking it into touch, but finding a player. And you've got players who are technically more skillful and catch the ball literally on their feet in the air, and away they go. So, but that's why we went professional. And that's why people like Elsie could run around the field forever because they trained every day. So, look, it's about, I think it's personal pride in that scenario. So I agree with your observation. You know, I look at Craig Pawson, and I think to myself, you're one-paced. How often do you sprint? How often do you get caught behind play? You know, and I look at and I can actually do that. Andre Mariner now shouldn't be refereeing, right?
You said it.
He reads the game well, but he shouldn't be refereeing. He's now 51 plus. I think Graham Scott's 54. Hey?
But there is a role for them, though, right? Because they can just go and work as a fourth official or in the VAR room, so they don't have to be forced out of the game.
The thing about fourth official is, do you want that guy then to take over your match when the guy in the middle gets injured? So for me, in the VAR room is ideal, providing they're doing the job well. I'm not about giving people jobs just because this is what they've done. I want people to be good at what they do.
Can I ask you about this handball rule before we run out of time? So I've got this personal, this is more of a personal frustration thing that I don't think it's consistent. So obviously you've got this current description is the natural silhouette of your body in relation to when you're jumping or something like that. And I don't think it makes sense at all for both sides. So if you've got, for example, a corner going into the box, you've got a striker and a centre back. If they both gear up for a big jump, if it hits the attacker's arm, if the attacker and the defender, they both swing their arms up a little bit, slightly out of a natural shape. If it hits the attacker's arm, maybe a yellow card. If it hits the defender's arm, yellow card plus a penalty. So you've got exactly the same movement, but there is far more that can go wrong for the defender for doing an identical movement. And surely it gives the advantage to the offensive team, like in every set piece. I don't quite understand how that. It's a weird one, but it just constantly plays on my mind every time I see a set piece, because it means the attackers have a free hit essentially, where and the defenders have to be careful and maybe can't jump as enthusiastically because they know if an arm's out, that's it, pen and a booking. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, let me first of all, when I was boss of the PGMOL, I brought in a body mechanics expert.
A body mechanics expert,
someone who looked at body mechanics, and which was quite clear. If you are jumping for the ball, right, once your elbow goes above the horizontal, you're not gaining elevation anymore. At that point, you're gaining elevation. At that point, you're not. Which begins to get into the realms of you gain elevation that way. You don't gain elevation if your arm's out. Right?
Yeah, good
so
point,
you then start getting into that realm of saying, when you have those discussions and those coaching points with referees, it's understanding what is natural, what's not natural. Into all that scenario that you're talking about, you've then got to put in the distance of the body from where the ball has been kicked. You have to take into account, as that defender, let's talk about defender in handball, has he got the opportunity to withdraw? Is he withdrawing his arm, or is he actually moving his hand and arm towards the ball?
Yeah.
And those are the things that you have to take into account. The law is clear. If a defender handles and it's inside the penalty area, it's a penalty kick. If an attacker, it's a direct free kick. That's how the law is interpreted by the lawmakers. What you have to do as a referee is apply it. But the handball scenario, they've overcomplicated it, because they've taken out the natural ability of a referee to use his body to gain movement and distance off the mark. If you're going to make a sideways movement right, you then do put your arm out to gain speed, and so they've complicated the law that opens up the opportunity for 100 referees in a room to be split. I'm not suggesting 50-50, might be 70-30. But what that says to me is you're going to get referees interpreting the same incident in a different way.
You're reminding me of the Sissoko handball in the Champions League final for Tottenham when he went to point for, I think, for a teammate to cover a run or a position, and it hit his arm. And he wasn't trying to block the ball; he was trying to point for a directive for whatever. And I felt that fair enough. It did hit his hand, but I feel like that's so harsh because it wasn't an intentional handball.
We've seen Dan Burn jump for ball. The ball goes over his head. He's in the air like that. The player behind him's heading it onto his arm. Penalty kick, and he can't even see it. And to me, that's not a handball. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
I mean, I think that ultimately what you do is you study the laws of the game, but then you bring the referees together regularly in group meetings and you discuss. So the errors that are made, you actually put them on the screen. You say to the referee, "Talk me through this incident. How did you see? How did you come to this decision?" And if then the group agree that it's a wrong decision, you then have to start talking again to say, well, how can we avoid it in the future? How can we interpret that incident correctly? It's no good, for example, one referee marching 9.15 out and another one not. What you want to do is have a degree of consistency. I mean, the thing that interests me this evening, and the question that you've not asked that worries me more than anything, is that your club and their opposition are cheating you without you knowing, because you're paying for 90 minutes of football and you're only getting 55. And there were 3 games last year that were played at 45 minutes actual playing time. So again, this is where football as a whole has to sit down. And this is why I've been saying now for about 8-9 years, we need an independent timekeeper because the referees aren't doing the job properly, right? And we need a countdown clock in the stadium. And we need to review timing of games. Because
ultimately, the reason why we're not bothered about what you're on about there is because we lost the game in which the time wasting occurred. So we're not really bothered.
Well, I think I can understand it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I want you to have value for money.
Yeah, I think what they did in the World Cup was good, though, Keith, when they played 10, 12 minutes injury time because somebody was obviously there timing when that ball went out. So it was very, very difficult for players to actually time waste because it was going to get added on. And sometimes I'm sitting there thinking that's not a bad thing. You were getting sort of 12 minutes injury time, and then you looked at the game and you thought, well, yeah, that's right. They are playing the extra time and they're getting rid of because you didn't see a lot of time wasting going on in the World Cup.
Well, and I mean, it's fairly level playing field. If you're going to Europe and you're, on a home and away leg situation, then you really see it. I've come off games in Europe where the away team have not turned up. Mm-hmm. What they've done is they've literally put 12 players back, and I say 12 players because they're only 11, but it's like they've got 12 players and they don't come in out of the penalty area.
Yeah.
And you don't get a game, and you come off the pitch, and you say, "What's that about it? Is that football?" So I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it is about you getting relatively value for money, and players giving you value for money as well. And and referees, look, what frustrates me is referees going in at corner kicks saying, "Stop doing that. Stop the hauling and pulling and all that goes with." And then they come out and ignore it all.
It just starts again. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's madness. Billy, have you got any questions for Keith before we let him go?
No, I'm done now. That's fantastic listening to Keith.
Well, listen, Billy. Keith, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really do appreciate it coming on. I know that the viewers have really loved hearing your insights into it and looking back at your refereeing career as well. It's been brilliant having you on, Keith, and we'd love to get you back on later on in the year, maybe, and see if anything's changed.
Yeah, great. Thank you for
all right. Me. Thank you very much, Keith. You take care now. Good night.
Bye.
So there you go. That was former referee Keith Hackett, and really nice guy as well. Sent him a message about coming on the show earlier today, and he said he'd be delighted to come on straight away. Very, very, very good guest. I'm disappointed to say there was some poor comments in the chat, which I didn't put up, towards Keith, which I thought were very poor. Really? Only one or two. Mr. Toon, Mr. Spoons, I did get your question to ask him, but I wasn't going to ask him that. But thank you for your $4.99 super chat. He did ask me to ask Keith Hackett if he thinks Mike Dean is a complete knob. I couldn't really ask him that. A bit more professionalism. We are. But listen, we are getting some really good guests on the channel, and it's great that these people are wanting to come on and talk things over. Keith was a very, very high up referee, obviously, in charge of it all as well. So it's absolutely, it's brilliant to get somebody like him on and to come on. David, thank you for your $4.99. He says, didn't want to spoil the flow. Great guest, great show. Thank you very much. We're not done yet, though, because what we're going to do is, because we haven't done a match review, because that was going to be the show tonight, but then obviously Keith said, he could join us tonight, and we weren't going to tell Keith no. So we're going to spend the last moments of the show doing a brief talk about the game and, of course, the player ratings, because I think everybody wants to know what our player ratings are for that match on Friday night, which is it's going to be very, very interesting. Now, obviously, we kept Keith for just over an hour, but you don't have to apologize, Ian. I know it was a jokey question. Of course I do. But it was, it was typical. Yeah, it was typical you. I have to say that it was typical you, which I knew straight away as soon as I saw the comment. I seen you put a few daft ones in before that, something around the lines of, can you ask him if Mike Dean's a complete knobbler? And I kept on smirking under me, like some of the comments about Mike Dean that I saw, I was dying to laugh, but I had to, we've got to stay professional. We are a professional channel on the Toon Review. George T, thank you. What, you two laughing at?
I wasn't laughing. I was very professional. I just picked up the first time of the show.
Yes. Do you know what it is, Billy? I saw a couple of comments saying, you always know when they're being professional when Billy doesn't come out with any quirky quips and keeps his gob shut. But it was good that, listen, the whole point of getting a guest on is to let the guest talk. That's the whole point. What's the point of getting a guest on if we're just going to keep battering with questions and stuff like that? I like the way Keith talks. He's fantastic to listen to.
Yeah, I could listen to him all day.
Yeah, he's got some brilliant insights into not just the game, but obviously what he's done in his career. I mean, managing refereeing West Germany, Italy, that's huge.
That's what he needs. He needs to do a referees podcast. I'd listen to so much of that.
Absolutely.
A referees podcast would be awesome.
And the thing is, I heard him on TalkSport talking to Laura Woods this morning, and I was thinking when I was driving, he'd be a brilliant guest to get on. And then Billy contacted us this afternoon saying, we've got his email address. He'd be a brilliant guest to get on. And so I just pinged him an email, and he replied within half an hour. And that's this kind of guy he is. You can see that. He replied straight away and said he'd love to come on. And, it's good to get a former referee and head of referee and his interpretation of what goes on now. It's fair to say that I don't think Mr. Hackett is very happy with most of the referees that referee in this country right now. But he's right. VAR can work if it's done properly, and we've seen it work in other countries done properly. And that's the frustrating thing about VAR. And Friday's game, it was such a shitter for Elliot Anderson to be disallowed that goal. We've got a couple of super chats. George, thank you very much for your £10. He says, that was brilliant. Enjoyed it. Learned a lot about the referees. Spike Milligan, thank you very much for your £20. He says, as far as I'm concerned, we won 3-1. Absolutely. And Samsonite Dove, thank you very much for your 200 Danish kroner. He says, quality show tonight, guys. Cheers. Right. The game. on Friday. Oh, we've got another one there. £2 from Andy. Brilliant guest and insight. Thank you very much, buddy. I Like Coffee says it was very unusual seeing Billy not put in his classic one-liners during the show. Toon fan says he got to speak to Laura Woods, the jammy bastard. Yeah, he did. Look, the game, we came away with 3 points. It's safe to say that I was very, very annoyed during the commentary about that goal getting disallowed. It was a real
I was at the pub, by the way. I was at the pub, and I was obviously concentrating on watching it with some of my friends. And my friends had got you on their phone. And when that goal was disallowed, they just pointed the phone at me, and all I could just see was you absolutely raging. I was like, yeah, I of course he is. Like,
well, I like to stay nice and calm, Alex, when situations go against us like that. I was staggered. I just couldn't. I watched it so many times on replays, and I keep thinking, Newcastle's passage of play ended. Forest cleared it. They made a hash of it. Twice they touched the ball, and he's given offside. I just could not understand it. And I mean, my blood pressure went through the roof. I mean, well. It's Bruno G. Thank you for your $4.99. He says, "Why is Maxi not staying with the rest of the squad? And has Paul picked up an injury?" Well, he is injured. He's not in the England squad, but I don't think it's serious. I think it's just one of those where we don't want to risk him, and we've pulled him out the squad. I don't know. None of the squad are together at the minute, I know your name's not Bruno, but I'm going to call you Bruno. They're all on holiday at the minute. They've been given some time off. That's why Bruno's in the Maldives and Joe Linton's somewhere singing on karaoke on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, they're all everywhere.
They're everywhere, but they are coming back shortly, and they will be going over to Dubai for, I think it's a week they're going over there for, because it's Eddie wants a bit of warm weather training. So I'm really, really pleased that they're getting that little bit of downtime as well, obviously. But I don't think it's a serious injury to Nick Pope. But talking about Nick Pope, that first goal, the Forest goal on Friday, Billy, you were a little bit critical of Popey because you thought that he should have called for the ball. I mean, Alex, what were your thoughts on that?
I don't think Pope did anything wrong. I think it was a very good hit from Denny. The angle, I think it was very sweetly hit. I think the error is 100% Botman's. And I'll say the same about Botman as I did about Pope's mistake against Liverpool. Botman's had 25 matches where he's not put a foot wrong. He's allowed one, as long as he doesn't do it all the time. If he does this one in 26 games, I'm all right with that.
My point was that Botman was passing blind. Pope could see the full picture. Your goalkeeper's got to be vocal. Got to be vocal. He's got to scream away. He's got to do it.
Yeah, and
he didn't. Or he might have done.
I mean, Billy, Abs is saying no way was Pope to blame for that. Were you? Can I just ask you a question? Were you a goalkeeper in your previous life, and you were hard done by or something? Because I know you're not a fan of Dubravka, and now you're saying about Nick Pope. I'm just wondering if you have an inner hatred of goalkeepers.
I think he's got a point, but I still think that would, it'd still be 5%. It'd still be 95% Botman, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's more Botman's fault, obviously, than Pope. But if Botman can't see what he's passing into, Pope can see the full picture. And the keeper.
Well, if he's not scanned, don't play the pass. That's why scanning is that's why all these technical coaches talk about scan rates. You scan before you play the ball. You don't play a blind pass, like you said.
He did it earlier in the game as well.
A shout or not a shout.
He did it earlier in the game as well with a blind one and got away with it, just about.
Yeah,
he won't do it again now. He'll check his blind spot every time.
Yeah, we got to remember, right, that it's Botman's first season in the Premier League. He's been magnificent. He's been called up to the Dutch squad at last. Thank God for that.
After he's made a mistake as well. Of all time, it's just funny.
Look, it's like we said the other week. When players make bad passes, they don't really get noticed unless they lead to a goal like it did on Friday. Players make bad passes all over the field throughout the game. Even Bruno, even Joe Linton. We've seen it. Yes. But obviously, Maxi didn't play too well. Alex went off injured, apparently, with a problem. But Elliot Anderson was an absolute breath of fresh air coming on that pitch.
Yeah, I mean, Maxi looked injured, to be fair. He wasn't opening up and properly sprinting. He looked a little bit lethargic. something looked wrong. I mean, it was he contributed to the first goal. He set Willock. It was a lovely floated pass to let Willock run onto, but besides that, he didn't look right. Something was wrong, and it was obviously the right decision to bring him off at half time. And then Elliot Anderson fully took his chance. And may I just add, look, again, I'm not a manager, I'm not a professional, I don't know what I'm talking about in a professional capacity, but I've said 100 times I would much prefer to see Elliot Anderson out on the wing where he played for Bristol Rovers, not in midfield. And he looked so much better on the wing. He got space, he had less positional responsibility and things to worry about, and he was allowed to make a mistake and just run at people, and it was so good because he reminds me of really young Ross Barkley, where he just doesn't care who you are, he's going to run at you.
Good comparison.
It was brilliant. It was a breath of fresh air, and I want to see him on the wing, not in midfield, because he was great.
Yeah. But the main man, again, Billy, before we do the play ratings, Isak was just superb, wasn't he?
Yeah, I said on the Friday night show that I've been critical of his physical part of the game.
I think everybody was worried about his physicality.
I'm not anymore. He went into every challenge. He won aerial challenges. He ran his socks off for 97 minutes pressing. That was about as close to a perfect number 9 performance as you're going to see. Serious to God, he was awesome.
Yeah. It was just and the fact that we, that disallowed goal. What I love about this squad is that they don't give up. They keep fighting. They keep working. They know they can score goals. We got the penalty, which was a clear penalty. I just loved the absolute shithousery from Kieran Trippier, taking all the flack off the Forest players and Navas, of course, goading him while he was standing on the penalty spot, just smiling. And then at the last minute, hands the ball to Isak. There you go, son. Stick that in the back of the net. Up yours, Navas. It was superb. But we'll do the play ratings. We've got about 10 minutes left of the show, so we'll do them. We'll go through them quite briskly. But it'll be interesting to see what these guys have rated the players. We'll start off with you, Alex, for Nick Pope.
I'm going to give him an 8. I'm going to give him a higher score purely because he's wobbled a lot in recent weeks and he had no wobbles. He came in and confident, made a few good saves, distribution was better, no silly faffs. Yeah, I'll give him an 8. But he probably deserves a 7, but I'm going to give him an 8 because he didn't have any mistakes and I'm happy he's got his head back.
Interesting. Billy?
I'm going to give him a 7. The save from Brennan Johnson with his feet was a great save. Crucial save as well. But I do partly blame him for the goal. But 7's a good score. Not a lot. I'm not saying it's 50% or anything.
All right, Paul Daniels, it's fine. Don't worry. You're entitled to your opinion, Billy. Don't worry.
It's not a lot.
I'm going to give him a 7 as well. I think I'm bordering on a 7 or 8, but I'm going with a 7. He did make one really good save from Brennan Johnson down to his right. Again, like I said in the commentary, it's good to see him using his feet as well. If he doesn't think he'll get there with a dive, he'll go with his feet and get a good clearance on it as well. I'm going with a 7. Right, our skipper, Kieran Trippier, Billy.
Back to his best. Oh, absolutely outstanding game. Had us on the front foot all game. Captained us with the normal aplomb he does. He was a proper leader. Yeah. Really back to his best. Don't think he was beaten maybe once by IU, but if it was once, I think a 9 out of 10 is a good score for Kieran. I thought he had an absolute storming game, back to his best.
Yeah. Well, I was going to give him an 8, but I'm doing the same as what Wes is doing. I'm going up to a 9 for the penalty shithousery because I think that just put Forest off completely. Navas thought that Trippier was going to take the penalty. There's no doubt about that. Even I thought Trippier was taking the penalty when he was standing there. But I think it was great. I still think some of his corners could be better. The amount of times we swing that ball in. But whether that's Trippier or whether it's the other players just not getting on the end of them, I do not know. But corners are bloody frustrating for us. But hopefully that'll come to fruition at some point. So I'm going with a 9 for Trips. Alex?
I'm going to give him an 8, and I'll play devil's advocate. I agree with everything you guys have said. But it's also worth pointing out 0 out of 11 crosses, not good enough. Gave away 4 fouls, too many. he's been a lucky boy in recent matches because he's been booked and then he'll do 2 or 3 more. He's been lucky he's not had a cheeky double yellow, to be fair.
He is getting beaten quite a lot, isn't he? And sticking the leg out and then
4 fouls is a lot.
Yeah. Interesting.
No, not game it weren't. Shelby did about 12.
Well, yeah.
True.
Right, we'll go to the left-hand side. Big Dan Burn. I thought Dan Burn played really well. I know you're done. In the words of Alex, I am done with Dan Burn at left back. I'm done with it. But I thought he did all right. I thought he played really... I don't think Brennan Johnson got the better of him too many times. I think a couple of times he did, but I'd expect that from Brennan Johnson because he's a very, very good player. But I think he did. I think he did all right. So I'm going with an 8 for Dan Burn. Alex?
No, I'll give him a 7. I think an 8 is far too generous. I thought this game suited him a lot more. I think, when did IU come on?
Started.
He started, yeah.
He started IU, yeah.
Yeah, he was very comfortable against IU. Although IU rolled back the years a few times, he's not a bad player for 34-year-old. He's pretty tidy. No, I thought Burn did fine. He was back physically. He was much better. He won most of his duels in the air and on the ground. Passing could have been a little bit better, but it was a decent performance. And this is exactly why I've said Dan Burn is absolutely fine as to play left back against teams like Forest. There are games where it's
overlapped
acceptable.
a few times on Friday, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. Stephen
quite
Merchant on the wing.
times.
There are games where
there's
where
just
Burn
no
is
need
fine.
for it, man. You made your point, Billy.
Yeah, I think 8's a good score. So I'll give him an 8.
Yes,
I think
That's
they had a really good game.
high. That's so generous.
I think
Listen, Cole, you've given yours. Be quiet. Let Billy
Johnson
speak.
Brennan Johnson was their danger man. And by the way, the Forest fans were saying that Steve Cooper was playing mind games with Brennan Johnson. Really? Do we care if he was playing or not?
He's not at that level yet.
Well, yeah, because we had him as injured in the preview, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Dan Burn had him in his pocket for the 99% of that game. So, yeah, 8 for Dan Burn.
Okay, we'll move on to Fabian Schär. Alex?
Yeah, much better game. A lot better from him. Passing accuracy was a little bit down in that game, the 74%, but 9 out of 12 aerial duels, an absolute monster. 9 out of 12 aerial duels is. I mean, you can clearly see that the game plan was there. All right, let's not try and hoof it to Botman or Burns' side. Let's try and put it on Schär or in between Schär and Trippier. And Schär was not having it. He was like, no, I'm going to win all of these. And he won 9. I've got to give a rating though. 2 out of 11 long balls though, Fabian. It's not good enough. I'll give him a 7.
Okay. NUFC Ollie says Navas made some great saves. Remember, it could have been 5. Yeah, he did actually make some very good saves.
Yeah, Anderson's volley was outstanding.
Oh god, the way he kept his eye. We'll come to him, but the way he kept his eye on that ball as it dropped, because Isak could have easily put him off. He didn't take his eye off the ball. It was a hell of a shot and a hell of a save. I'm going with an 8 for Fabian. I think he was solid. I think if we're asking him to do central defensive work, I thought he did it very well again. I thought he was looking back to the old Fabian after his little concussion. And let's not forget, he was badly injured in the first half. A horrible tackle from that, who you say is a great 34-year-old. It was a scissor tackle from behind and not even booked. It was awful. And I agree. And I think Keith Hackett would have sent him off. But I think he was an 8. Billy?
Yeah, I think 8's fair. I think Battery's best though, considering he's made a few mistakes of late. Didn't make any on Friday at all. And like you said, he got kicked early doors. I thought he was going to go off, but he managed to get for the game. And
how many times have we said that this season? Thought, Fabian Schär looks like he's got to go off, and then suddenly.
But that did look like a bad one, didn't it?
It was horrible. It was horrible because his foot, as IU slid in from behind him, his foot, I think it was right foot or left foot, one of them, got stuck underneath IU, and it was horrible. I mean, that could have easily been a broken ankle, but luckily it wasn't, and he played on as he normally does. Right, Dan, Sven Botman. See how I had to say Dan there about 6 times to get out my system. Hey, I didn't do it once in commentary, by the way. I was proud of myself. I either kept saying the Big Dutchman or, Sven Botman. Sven. Anyway, Botman, I'm going to give a 6. I thought he looked way off colour. Not just the goal. I wasn't... Look, the guy's allowed to have a bad game. I'm not concerned about him at all. I just didn't think he played very well on Friday night. I still love him. He's still a Rolls Royce. He's still a beast. And I think he'll still be a future captain of Newcastle United Football Club, future captain of Netherlands. But he wasn't great on Friday night. A lot of the chat are agreeing with me. I'm going with a 6. Alex?
I'll give him a 7. I think it was an 8 performance, but the error docks him a point. So
you thought his performance was an 8?
I thought he was the metronome of our defense. He had a 10 to 15% higher passing accuracy than anybody else in the back four.
Alex, you do know that the metronomes are little things that jump around at Christmas time in the shopping centre.
He was brilliant.
Calling him a metronome really isn't the right thing to say, man.
He is the reason we can, there were a few times in that game where we lost a bit of control, and he's one of the reasons why we get it back. Him linking up with Bruno, he's so hard to get the ball off, and he plays those passes that go really underappreciated. Instead of playing it to a fullback, playing it to a winger, back to midfield, he can just take the ball and take 4 players out of the game and get us straight on the run. Yeah, and it's so integral. I think
is why we do the player ratings. This is why we do
7 with the error. I thought it was great.
Everybody sees the game differently. I still think he's going to be the best centre back in the country by a long way.
86% pass accuracy, and he tried 73 passes. There's a reason for that. He tries more passes than any of our back 4 generally.
Well,
it depends on.
But I think he was the most relieved man on that pitch when the penalty went in, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Billy, your views on Botman?
Well, he's 60% culpable for the goal, so that'll dock him a little bit of 70% probably. Dock him a little bit. I'm going to give him a 7. That pass that he played out for the goal that was disallowed, the original pass, was probably his best pass of the season. It was an absolute awesome pass. Yeah. His passing's just phenomenal. It's like watching Glenn Hoddle all over again. Some of his passing is crazy. Phenomenal. Yeah. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay. Right, moving to midfield. We'll start with Bruno, the Brazilian. And Billy, we'll start with you on Bruno.
God, I thought it was fantastic Saturday, Friday. I really did. He played in both roles. They've fluctuated between the two of them, Longstaff and Bruno. Yeah. But he was just superb. And I've seen some stats this morning, which were phenomenal, really. Yep. I don't think he didn't lose a duel the whole game, whether it was aerial or on the ground.
7 out of 7 ground, 2 out of 2 aerial. Yeah,
unbelievable. And his passing was virtually that kind of level as well. Yeah, he was the force behind the team performance, and it was one of the best team performances for a long time. I'm giving him a 9.
Okay. I'm giving him a 9 as well. I thought he was outstanding again. Just the way teams are targeting his ankle. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We've said that for the last few games that we've seen players going hard in on his ankle. But you know what? He was right up for that challenge with John Joe on Friday night. You could tell. And you could tell that what John Joe's instructions were. And look, I'm not going to have a go at John Joe for trying to, rough us up and do all of that kind of stuff. He's a Nottingham Forest player now. He's going to do that for his team. I don't have a problem with that. He's got to be professional. He's not going to go on the pitch and say, "Oh, I'm not going near Bruno because we were teammates for a while." Bull, you play for the team that you've actually got your shirt. You know what I mean? So he was a Forest player, and that's end of story. However, Bruno, for me, was just outstanding. So a 9 for me. Alex?
I'm going to give him a 10. Okay. Even though he didn't score. Because I think it was pretty much a complete midfield performance in terms of what you want from a midfielder. He drew 4 fouls. 4. So he got us 4 free kicks, 88% pass accuracy, completed every single duel, arrived late in the box and tried a few shots. I mean, what more could you do? What would you?
You can't. If you're giving him a 10, there isn't any more he can do. Alex.
If you sit as an analyst and look at that, other than saying, "Oh, well, you could have scored," what more can you say? What can you criticize? It was perfect.
Hey, listen.
I don't understand what I could criticize from that performance from a midfielder. I couldn't get any more out of it, really.
Cameron says, for me, it wasn't John Joe's actions. It was his comments after the match. Disgusting. It was tongue-in-cheek, Cameron. It was all tongue-in-cheek. Of course it was. He was he's still good mates with all the Newcastle players, remember? And it was total tongue-in-cheek. Come on. He's having a bit of banter with his ex-colleagues there. There's no doubt about that. Right. Sean Longstaff, Billy.
Yeah, again, just perfect, not perfect, but he had a fantastic game. Covered every blade of grass as he always does. The energy is phenomenal from him. Didn't give the ball away too many times as I can remember, but he fluctuated between the 6 and the 8 as Bruno did with Bruno, but not quite as effective as Bruno. So I'm going to give him an 8.
Okay, Alex.
I'm going to give a 7, but I agree with everything Billy said. I don't know. I just don't feel like it's an 8, but I do agree with everything he said. I think he's vastly underrated. I think it's a blessing in disguise, the fact that he's had a period of time where he's played as an 8 and a 6, because now he can rotate so much better with Bruno and really understand what he's meant to be doing in what phase. It's helped his game so much, and he's going to be so important for us when we qualify for whatever European competition we qualify for. Because even if we buy a new midfielder, we're still going to need him. He's going to be so important, and he's gaining so much experience, and he's so solid. If we can have a Sean Longstaff that gives 7 out of 10s every week, we can keep him for another 5 or 10 years. Well, maybe not 10 years. It's a bit far, but he's going to be really useful. He gets a 7.
Well, I'm going with a 7 as well. Yeah, for all that's been said, I'm going with a 7. Right, Joe Willock. I'll start on Joe Willock, and I'm giving Joe a 9. I thought first half, brilliant. I thought second half, faded a little bit early first half, but second half of the second half, he was back there, running around and challenge, running with the ball. And, listen, for me, Joe Willock, if you're going to pick the amount of absolute absolute big bull's testicles of players for England, how Joe Willock is not in there, I do not know. But like Eddie Howe says, he's up and coming. He keeps these performances. Southgate can't ignore him for much longer. It's as simple as that. They just can't. But I thought he's getting back to fitness from that little hamstring that he got at Bournemouth, and I think he's getting better and better. And we all know what Joe Willock's body language is now. We know he's like that, but when he gets that ball, my God, he's fantastic. He drives us forward. So a 9 for me. Alex?
Yeah, he deserves a 9. Obviously, that Southampton game was incredible. He made a few mistakes and was a bit wobbly, and he's come straight back in. He sat out the team for a little bit. He's come straight back in, and he's been brilliant for a couple of weeks now. Absolutely incredible. Some of the technical ability to get that little back flick he did that the club have posted as a highlight, to get the ball away from the 2 players on the line. Just his driving runs, the assists. He's really, really improved. And Southgate is completely honest. He's a muppet. I want him to resign. He should have gone at the end of the World Cup. I loathe him as a manager. Balogun should have been capped. Joe Willock should be capped instead of Conor Gallagher, and Ward-Prowse deserves to be in there instead of Calvin Phillips. That's 3 that he's got wrong straight off the bat. I think he's a terrible manager and needs to go. He's ruining the future of the England squad. It is beyond a joke. Joe Willock should be frustrated that he didn't get a call-up. I think all this talk of Joe Willock for England in the past have been a little bit premature. I think that this was valid, though. Is he better on form than Conor Gallagher right now? Yes. Is he playing more minutes? Yes.
Well, Calvin bloody Phillips, he's played 57 minutes all season.
Different players, but if we compare Ward-Prowse to Calvin Phillips, which I think is fair, Ward-Prowse is doing better, playing more. It's ridiculous. And
the only, Joe Willock's he's 20-year-old. He's got a long future ahead of him.
He's 23, but get him capped, get him used, at least get him used to the England setup, so that if his form continues and Southgate wants him for a future tournament, it means he's used to England. He's been capped already. He's had a go. Just get him in. It's friendlies. Who cares? He's an idiot.
The European qualifiers, Alex.
European qualifiers, are they?
Yeah, they are.
I thought Italy was a friendly. Was it not?
No, Euro 24 qualifiers.
Because they've cancelled it, haven't they? Because of Naples ultras getting a bit lippy.
I don't know.
Marcello Lippi.
Well, they were talking about it. I think there was some threat from Naples.
There it is. Alex just let it go. He wasn't even replying to that.
I'm just sorry. I'm in one of my anti-Southgate moods because I just think he's terrible. He needs to go.
Yeah. Well, I think we all feel like that, to be honest. Anyway, where the hell were we? What did you give Willock?
Joe Willock's really good. He gets a 9.
Right, Billy, have you scored him?
No, not yet.
Sorry.
Considering he had a clogger trying to kick his bollocks in for the whole game, I thought it was absolutely outstanding. And the flashes of skill, and the lad's got skill in abundance. He really has. He's a flair player. He's the kind of player I love to watch. That was close to his best on Friday night. I'm going to give him a 10.
Wow. Okay, you're going with a 10.
Despite him missing an easy chance as well.
Yeah, he could have had a goal and the assist, couldn't he?
I Like Coffee says something about the Radicals planning to target the England fans in Naples. Well, just play it behind closed doors if that's what they're going to do. Punish Italy for that, not England. Anyway, let's move on to the front three. We'll start off with Maxi. I'm giving Maxi a 4. Look, if he was injured, then but I'm going on gameplay, and it was a 4. He was injured, but so that's it. That's it. Billy,
I'll give him a 6 just for the pass that set Willock off for the cross for the goal. Outstanding pass. He did 2 or 3 of them, but he wasn't fit, and you could tell by looking at him.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, I'll give him a 6. I think that's fair. I think he probably docked a point for the lethargic runs and looked injured. And then I think he gets points for the passes and ultimately the pass that led to the goal. So a 6.
Okay. Right, we'll move to the other side. Jacob Murphy. Alex.
One of his better games, and I feel like because I've rated other players so highly, I've got to give Murphy a bit more. I'll give him an 8, but I feel like he could deserve more because there's a bunch of stats floating around where he created 5 chances, which is the most out of any player of the other 14 clubs this weekend. Yeah, well done. I mean, we don't need 10 out of 10s from Jacob Murphy. We just need him to do that consistently. Yeah. Just try and take your man on. Try and get a few balls into the box. Work hard. That's it. You don't have to set the world alight. You know, what Jacob Murphy is doing now is exactly what people used to think Ryan Fraser was doing.
Yeah.
This is what actual work is. He's doing it consistently.
I'm giving him an 8 as well. Exactly the same reasons as Alex. Billy.
Yeah, it wasn't a breath of fresh air to see our right winger go past the man along the line and cross the ball in.
Did it
fantastically well on more than 4 or 5 occasions. Superb game, 8 out of 10's a fair score.
And now to Alexander Isak, and I don't think we need to go round the table here, guys, because I think we all know what Alexander Isak scored. He was absolutely bloody sensational. That first goal to adjust his body the way he did because the ball was behind him, just to get some control on it, to put it in the net was wonderful. The penalty, to have that balls to take it in the 93rd minute or whatever it was just, and to score it the way he did, just with so much confidence. He just looks alive. He just looks ready to go. And the fact we got 98 minutes out of him was fantastic. So 10s across the board, guys?
Yes.
I feel 10's underestimating him. You can't give him any more now, but fantastic performance.
Well, it just, I think you called it a complete striker's performance, Billy, on Friday night. I think you're right. It was.
Yeah.
Right, substitutes. Obviously, Elliot Anderson was the first one to come on, and he came on at halftime, and I'm giving Elliot Anderson a 10. I thought he was absolutely incredible. Every time he got the ball, it looked like something was going to happen. That volley that he hit was incredible, to keep his eye on the ball, the composure, the technique. He just ran them ragged, and because he's playing in his right position. And I can't wait to see more of him as he progresses. So 10 for me. Billy?
Are you asking me? Sorry, I went off a minute.
Well, I think your name's Billy, isn't it?
Well, it went off a second or so. So, 10 out of 10 is very, very fair. And it's just unfortunate for him that Joe Linton's going to be back next game and probably going to be playing on that left-hand side.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Because we need to push him a bit further now and This lad's the real deal. Yeah, 10 out of 10 all day long.
But it's not bad knowing that, players are now knowing that if they're making, people like Anderson and Murphy, they're making good shouts to start games now. So the pressure's on. They've got to maintain a performance, or we do have some players there who can make a difference. Alex?
10. I agree. I mean, and again, he's been training with the first team since August now, so he's got to understand what's expected of him in the team and in the role tactically. Surely he's ready. And yeah, he's got to get a 10 because he scored a goal. It's a farce that they ruled it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the volley, for a couple of completed dribbles, good driving runs, just really, really. It's one of those young, inspiring performances where, when players start to age, they start to get fearful of taking players on and things like that. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care who you are, whether you're a fullback, a centre-back, a midfielder, how famous you are. He's like, ball, goal, go, run, just do my job. Doesn't think about anything else. It's very refreshing.
Tanguy's just commented there saying he's really bulked up his strength too. Yeah, he does look like very, very strong. Very sort of he's low to the ground,
in his duels. 4 out of 8 ground duels. Considering he's still quite a young lad, it's not bad. Because it's Serge Aurier and Niakate or Niakite, however you say his name. They're big guys. So he's done very well there.
Yeah, don't say big something like you did the other night, Alex. You might cause an uproar, Jesus. Right. Who else came on? Was it just Lionel Richie?
We had Matt Ritchie for Murphy on the 84th minute. And that was it. Only 2 subs from anyone.
Yeah, I know. I don't think we can score Matt Ritchie, can we? He didn't.
Did he do anything? 8 out of 8 passes. 1 out of 1 crosses, 1 out of 1 long balls, and
all
a key pass.
We'll give him a. We'll give him a.
He did.
We'll give him a name.
I didn't know that. I'm just reading it, but apparently he did things. I don't remember that.
And by the way, what do you think was said? Did you guys notice that little Graham Jones looked very unhappy about something in the first half, and he was screaming. And he was. I mean, if you could lip read, then you knew exactly what he was saying. But there was a lot of expletives. Now I don't know whether he was just sticking up for Tyndall because there was something happened on the sidelines. The referee took people into the room at half time to have a word about the behaviours on the touchline. But listen, I don't know what it was.
I do have a question. What do we think Wilson's conversation was about? Because Wilson stood for 2 minutes with Eddie, pointing and doing tactical things.
Well,
with
the thing is, Alex, the thing is, we didn't see what had happened before, so I don't know whether Callum was warming up already and he'd spotted something and went and told Eddie Howe about something that he'd seen on the pitch.
It didn't look like an instruction for Callum coming on. It looked like he was having a proper chat tactically about what was going on the pitch.
Which is why I think he spotted something on the pitch that Eddie hadn't, and he just went. He came back and had a word with Eddie.
That's great, though, right? That's great. If a player on the bench sees something tactically and wants to go and offer something, that's really cool. I like that.
Absolutely.
I think it's fair to surmise that Wilson was suggesting, or Eddie Howe was asking, if moving Maxi into the centre was probably the right thing to do. Seeing how
you think it might have been that.
Possibly,
because he pushed Isak left, didn't he, for a little bit?
Yeah.
Anyway, Eddie Howe, Alex.
That's a tough one. I'll give him a 9. I'm not going to give him a 10 out of 10. I'll give him a 9. I liked the switch. I like switching Maxi because he's persisted with players a little bit too much if they've had a knock or been unsure. And I'm happy if Maxi was struggling, boom, off. He gives a young lad a chance. He gets points for that.
Yep.
I like that he's obviously a little bit hamstring into definitely choosing Murphy. But, I still like the fact that he did it last week as well. So, and I love the shape. Yeah, I liked everything. There were changes mid-game. There's subtle changes to set pieces, short corners, things like the Kieran Trippier holding the ball for Isak. All these things they are working on it week to week, which is 6 weeks ago we were all whinging we all sat here and said, look, guys, they will be working on new set pieces, new ideas. They will try new things because they're very young, modern coaches. And now we're seeing that. We're seeing lots of different set pieces and different shapes. We just got to give them time. We will lose matches. It happens.
Well, I'm giving them a 10. And the reason I'm giving him a 10 is because I thought we were superb on Friday night. I thought he got the tactics right. I thought he got the team right. I know Maxi got injured, but I think the team was spot on. I think he'd done the homework on Forest. Let's not forget, Man City didn't win at the City ground. Liverpool lost at Nottingham Forest, I believe. There's some big teams gone there and struggled, and I think there'll be big teams going there for the rest of the season and not get anything.
And the goal we conceded wasn't really the manager's fault either.
It wasn't. It was just an error, and I think technically we could have won that game 3 or 4-0, and it would have been probably a good
2.5 XG. So there's a case to be made for 3 goals, definitely.
Yeah. So we could have come away from that game a lot better than it actually was. There was a spell after Forest scored, of course. The tails were up and about a 10-minute spell. But I thought apart from that, we controlled the game. We were absolutely brilliant. We were knocking the ball around. We were creating opportunities. And I just thought the whole thing was, Howe has obviously been working on that all week. And, he made the change at halftime. He could, in theory, put Callum Wilson on and put Isak out to the left. He didn't. Like you see, Alex, he went with the youngster Anderson, who didn't let him down, who played brilliantly. I thought, he could have also took Isak off late in the game to put Callum on again and try and get a winning goal. He didn't.
I'm surprised he didn't.
Yeah, he kept with Isak, and it paid off. So you've got to give the manager credit for that. So for me, I'm going with a 10. Billy?
I liked everything I saw from him on Friday. I thought it was awesome.
Yep.
Given the fact that we know the depth of squad's shit. Given the fact you had to have 4 left backs on the bench.
Oh, God, yeah, that was awful, wasn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it? 4 left backs.
To manage a performance like that against a Premier League side and totally outclass them on their own muck-keep. 10 out of 10 all day long for me.
Lewis, Dummett, Manquillo, and Richie.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 all day long.
Yeah. The Newcastle fans, of course, get a 10. I've seen some crazy photos on social media about fans with bruises, literally like they've been in a fight all over their legs and stuff because of the limbs after Isak scored. There was just bodies flying all over the place, and some of the pictures I've seen, it's mental. But that's what it's all about. That's what we've been wanting for years is to have experiences like this. And I did me nut on Friday when that goal was disallowed, but rightly so. People that know me and watch this channel know that I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'll always be like that. I'm a passionate Newcastle fan, just like Billy and Alex are as well, and we will not. It was a farce. It really was. And then
it's important for us to be angry even when we've won, because if we're only annoyed when we've lost, it looks like we're just whinging for the sake of whinging. But we've got to still stick up for ourselves even when we've taken the 3 points to try. Got to be consistent with it.
How does the XG formula work, given we actually did score 3 goals?
Well, we don't get any XG credit for the disallowed goal. So we'll get a flat 0.78 or 0.79 for the penalty, and then the rest of it is just cumulative from the shots we had during the game. If you were to factor in the disallowed goal, that was probably quite a low XG opportunity because it was a great leap from Anderson behind the fullback. So that would have probably only been like 0.1 or 0.2 X. That would have been quite low value because it was just a great goal. And similarly, Isak's first goal was quite low XG because it was mental. So we actually got most of our XG accumulation from the clearer chances, like the Willock missed one, and the penalty, because it just gives you a lot of XG value.
Well, I don't mind this international break happening when it's happened, because it gives our injured players a bit of recovery time as well. Of course, for the visit of the Mancunians. Which it's a huge game. It's massive. So Fingers crossed. That is it. That is the end of the show. We've been on nearly 2 hours on a Monday night. Bloody hell. But it's been an absolutely packed show. Thank you again to Keith Hackett for his company for an hour and 10 minutes or so. Brilliant insight. And then, of course, we had to get the match review. We just had to somewhere along the line. But listen, we've had over 950 people watching tonight, which is incredible for a Monday night. So thank you so much, everybody, again. We maintain our position as the most watched live Newcastle channel, which is fantastic. It's a real honor, and that's all down to you guys out there. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much. Thank you for your super chats, guys. Really, really do appreciate it. We will be back tomorrow with the fan forum at 8 o'clock. I'm not sure who's going to be on that. Whether Alex is going to jump on just in case anybody badmouths Maxi. Billy will probably be with us.
They're half allowed to, aren't they? Really, he had a couple of good passes, and the rest was quite underwhelming. So
there you go, guys. He's giving you permission to just go for it tomorrow. But there you are. But thank you everybody for tonight. Thank you to Billy and Alex, and of course the mods once again. Brilliant work behind the scenes. We hope you've enjoyed the show, guys. Please do hit the like button before you leave the stream. And of course, if you're new to the channel, like what you see, hit that subscribe button. We are getting very close to 18,000. Keep spreading the joy, guys. Get people subscribed, and we'll hit it sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Good night.
How are the lads and lasses? Come on.